The ice stretched endlessly in every direction, broken only by the small research facility that hummed quietly against the Antarctic wind. Dr. Sam Rivers pressed his face closer to the microscope, studying the ancient ice core samples that held secrets from thousands of years ago. The isolation never bothered him. In fact, he preferred it this way. No distractions, no politics, just pure science. Outside, the aurora danced across the black sky, painting the snow in green and purple light. Sam had seen this display countless times during his 3 months at the station, but tonight something felt different. The lights seemed brighter, more focused, almost like they were moving with purpose rather than dancing randomly. He stepped away from his equipment and walked to the window. The aurora was definitely behaving strangely. Instead of the usual flowing curtains of light, it formed sharp geometric patterns that pulsed in rhythm. Sam reached for his camera, thinking this might be worth documenting, when the pattern suddenly collapsed into a single point of brilliant white light. The light descended rapidly, growing larger as it approached. What Sam had mistaken for an unusual aurora was actually something far more extraordinary. The craft that landed silently in front of the research station was unlike anything human technology could produce. Its surface seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it, creating an unsettling void against the white snow. Before Sam could process what he was seeing, the facility's lights went out. Emergency power kicked in a moment later, bathing everything in red light, but by then it was too late. The door to the station hissed open without anyone touching the controls. 3 figures entered, moving with fluid grace despite their bulky environmental suits. Sam grabbed the emergency radio, but static filled the speakers. Whatever these visitors were, they had completely jammed all communications. He backed away from the window as one of the figures approached. Through the transparent faceplate, Sam saw something that made his blood freeze. The face was vaguely humanoid, but wrong in fundamental ways. The eyes were too large, completely black, and positioned slightly too far apart. The skin had a gray-green tint that seemed to shift and change in the red. Emergency lighting. The alien raised a device that looked like a cross between a medical scanner and a weapon. A beam of blue light swept over Sam from head to toe, and information appeared on a display screen attached to the alien's arm. The creature made a sound that might have been communication, though it sounded more like static mixed with whale song. 2 more aliens entered the station, moving systematically through each room. They were clearly searching for something or someone. Sam realized with growing horror that he was probably the only human for hundreds of miles. The nearest research station was over 50 kilometers away, and with the storm that had been building all week, no aircraft could reach him even if he could call for help. One of the aliens gestured toward him with what was unmistakably a weapon. The message was clear enough. Sam raised his hand slowly, his mind racing. These beings had technology far beyond anything humans possessed. They had found Earth, located his isolated station, and jammed all communications with casual efficiency. This was not a chance encounter. The lead alien approached and pressed another device against Sam's neck. Pain shot through his nervous system, and his vision blurred. As consciousness faded, Sam's last coherent thought was that this was probably happening to other humans in other isolated locations around the world. Whoever these aliens were, they were being systematic about it. When Sam woke up, he was lying on a metal surface in a room that defied his understanding of physics. The walls curved in impossible ways, and lights embedded in the ceiling provided illumination that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. He sat up carefully, fighting off nausea and disorientation. He was not alone. 5 other people were scattered around the room, all in various stages of consciousness. A woman in Arctic gear like his own was already sitting up, looking around, with the same confusion Sam felt. An elderly man in what looked like hiking clothes was still unconscious near the far wall. 3 others, wearing everything from business suits to casual clothing, were beginning to stir. The woman in Arctic gear caught his eye and gestured toward what appeared to be a window. Sam stood on shaky legs and joined her. What he saw outside made him understand just how far from home they had traveled. They were in space, but not the empty void he expected. Massive structures stretched in every direction, connected by bridges and tunnels that sparkled with lights. Ships of various sizes moved between the structures with purposes he could not begin to guess. "My name is Dr. Lisa Park," the woman whispered. "I was taken from a research station in Greenland." "You? Sam Rivers, Antarctica. How long do you think?" "We were unconscious." Lisa pointed to a clock-like device on the wall. The symbols were alien, but the rhythm of change suggested they had been unconscious for several hours at least. Maybe longer. The room around them was clearly designed as a holding cell, though it was more sophisticated than any prison Sam could imagine. The walls were transparent from the inside, allowing them to see into a corridor where alien figures moved back and forth with efficient purpose. Some stopped to observe the humans, making notes on devices similar to the one that had scanned. Sam back at the research station. "They're studying us," Sam said quietly. Lisa nodded grimly. "The question is what they plan to do with us when they're finished." As if summoned by their conversation, 3 aliens entered the room. These were different from the ones who had captured Sam, taller, with more elaborate clothing and additional devices attached to their arms and heads. One of them, clearly the leader based on the way the others deferred to it, approached Sam directly. The alien spoke, and somehow Sam understood the meaning despite the words being completely foreign. Whether through technology or telepathy, the message was clear. They were specimens now, subjects for study and experimentation. Their value would be determined by how useful they proved to be. The alien leader continued, explaining with clinical detachment that this was standard procedure for the Vrex Empire. They encountered new species regularly, and the process was always the same. Capture representative samples, study their capabilities and weaknesses, then decide whether the species was worth enslaving or should simply be eliminated to prevent future complications. Sam felt a chill that had nothing to do with the temperature. In the room, these aliens had done this before many times. They were efficient, systematic, and completely without empathy for the species they encountered. To them, humans were just another primitive species to be catalogued and disposed of, but as Sam looked around at his fellow prisoners and then out at the massive alien construction outside their window, he began to think that the Vrex Empire might have made their first serious mistake. They had assumed humans would react like every other species they had encountered. They expected fear, despair, and eventual submission. They had no idea what they had actually captured. The alien leader finished its explanation and left with its companions, leaving the 6 humans alone in their transparent cage. Sam walked back to the window and stared out at the alien structures, his mind already beginning to work on the problem of their situation. Lisa joined him at the window. "What are you thinking?" Sam smiled grimly. "I'm thinking they have no idea what they've gotten themselves into." The experiments began 3 days after their arrival. Sam had been counting time by watching the patterns of activity in the corridor outside their cell. The aliens followed predictable schedules, which told him they were dealing with an organized, military-style operation rather than random raiders. Research Director Kroll entered their holding area accompanied by 2 guards and several floating devices that hummed with electronic activity. The alien was larger than the others Sam had seen, with additional cybernetic implants covering most of its head and arms. When it spoke, the translation came through more clearly than before. "You will cooperate with our procedures," Kroll announced. "Resistance will result in increased discomfort but will not prevent the tests from being completed." The first human they selected was Dr. Park. The guards used restraint fields to move her to an adjacent room while the others were forced to watch through the transparent walls. Sam observed everything carefully, noting how the alien technology worked, how the guards positioned themselves, and what kind of equipment they used. The tests themselves were brutal. Kroll and its assistants subjected Lisa to various forms of stress, measuring her responses to pain, fear, and exhaustion. They seemed particularly interested in human endurance limits and psychological breaking points. Throughout the ordeal, Lisa maintained her composure better than the aliens expected. When they applied electrical stimulation that should have caused screaming, she gritted her teeth and stayed silent. When they subjected her to sensory deprivation, she used meditation techniques to remain calm. Interesting, Kroll noted, speaking to its assistants. This specimen shows greater resilience than predicted. Normal parameters suggest complete psychological collapse should have occurred 12 minutes ago. Sam filed this observation away. The aliens had expectations based on previous encounters with other species. Humans were already proving different from their predictions, but they didn't seem to recognize the significance of this yet. Over the following days, each human was subjected to similar testing. Tom, the elderly hiker, surprised the aliens by maintaining coherent thought processes, even under extreme stress. Maria, who had been working as a night security guard when captured, demonstrated remarkable situational awareness even when the aliens tried to confuse her with sensory manipulation, but it was Sam's turn that provided the most revealing information. When the restraint field lifted him and moved him to the testing chamber, he didn't struggle or show fear. Instead, he studied everything around him with scientific curiosity. The aliens' equipment, their procedures, their reactions to unexpected results. During the stress test, Sam did something none of the other humans had done. He started asking questions. "That device you're using to measure neural activity," Sam said calmly while electrical current ran through his body. "The readings you're getting must be different from what you expected, or you wouldn't keep adjusting the settings." Kroll paused the test and stared at him. Specimens do not normally engage in analytical discussion during pain response evaluation. "Maybe that tells you something about the specimens you're dealing with," Sam replied. "What's the longest any previous species has maintained cognitive function under your current stress level?" Against its better judgment, Kroll found itself answering. "Standard tolerance is 4 minutes before complete mental breakdown." "You have been conscious and communicative for 26 minutes, Sam nodded thoughtfully. "And I'm not even trying to resist. I'm just curious about your methods. That should probably concern you." The alien research director ended the session early, clearly disturbed by Sam's reaction. Instead of being broken down by the experience, the humans seemed to be treating it as a learning opportunity. This was unprecedented in Kroll's extensive experience with conquered species. Back in the holding cell, Sam shared what he had learned with the others. The aliens expected them to break psychologically within predictable time frames. When humans exceeded those expectations, it created confusion and forced the aliens to adjust their procedures. This suggested their understanding of other species was based on consistent patterns that humans didn't follow. "They keep adjusting their equipment," Lisa observed. "Every time they test one of us, they have to recalibrate something." "Because we're not reacting the way their previous subjects did," Sam agreed. "The question is whether they'll recognize what that means before we can use it to our advantage." The days that followed revealed more about their captors. The facility they were imprisoned in was called Research Station Omega-7, a massive complex orbiting a dead moon. Through careful observation, Sam mapped out the station's layout, guard rotations, and daily schedules. He noticed that the aliens followed rigid patterns with little variation, suggesting they were not adaptable when faced with unexpected situations. More importantly, he began to understand their technology. The Vrex had achieved their advanced capabilities through incremental improvements on established principles rather than innovative breakthroughs. Their equipment was sophisticated but predictable, following logical patterns that could be understood and potentially exploited. Sam also discovered they were not the only prisoners on the station. Through a complex system of tapping on the walls, he made contact with specimens from other worlds. A creature that communicated through light patterns told him about the station's power systems. Another being that resembled a large insect provided information about guard schedules in other sections. What Sam learned from these communications was disturbing. The Vrex had been conducting these research operations for decades, maybe centuries. They had perfected the process of studying conquered species, identifying weaknesses, and then implementing planet-wide subjugation or extermination based on their findings. Every species they had encountered had followed similar patterns. Initial resistance, followed by psychological breakdown, followed by either useful compliance or complete despair. The Vrex had developed their procedures based on these consistent responses, and their success rate was nearly perfect, but humans were different in ways the aliens didn't understand. Where other species showed despair, humans showed curiosity. Where others broke down under stress, humans adapted and learned. Where others became passive, humans began planning. "They think they understand us," Sam explained to his fellow prisoners during one of their planning sessions. "But they're measuring us against standards that don't apply to our species. We're not reacting the way they expect, and they're interpreting our responses through the lens of their previous experiences." Tom, despite his age, had been observing the guards carefully. "They're not prepared for subjects who fight back intelligently. Their security measures are designed to contain desperate, broken creatures not thinking opponents." Maria had been testing the limits of their confinement. The restraint fields have predictable patterns. They cycle every 47 seconds. And there's a brief window where the field strength drops significantly. Sam processed this information along with everything else he had learned. The aliens had made assumptions about human psychology and capabilities based on their experience with other species. Those assumptions were wrong, but the Vrex hadn't recognized their error yet. They were still following their standard procedures, expecting humans to break down and become manageable subjects. Instead, the humans were learning, adapting, and planning. Every test the aliens conducted provided more information about their technology, their procedures, and their weaknesses. Every interaction revealed more about how the station operated and where the vulnerabilities lay. Krull continued its research, noting in its reports that humans showed unusual resilience, but still concluding that they were simply a more stubborn version of previously encountered species. The research director expected that given enough time and pressure, the humans would eventually conform to expected patterns. This fundamental misunderstanding would prove to be the Vrex Empire's fatal mistake. They had captured what they thought were primitive specimens for study and disposal. Instead, they had taken aboard a species of persistence predators who viewed every challenge as a problem to be solved, every setback as information to be processed, and every enemy as prey to be studied until their weaknesses were understood. Sam looked around at his fellow humans, seeing the same determination in their eyes that he felt in his own mind. The aliens thought they had captured helpless victims. They had no idea they had actually trapped themselves in a cage with Earth's most dangerous predators. The real experiment was about to begin, and the Vrex would not like the results. The opportunity came during Sam's 7th session in the testing chamber. Krull had become increasingly frustrated with the humans' refusal to break down according to established patterns, and had begun experimenting with more extreme procedures. This time, the research director was attempting to map Sam's pain responses using a device that sent targeted neural impulses directly into his nervous system. "Your species continues to deviate from expected parameters," Krull muttered, adjusting the machine's settings for the 4th time. "Previous subjects at this stimulation level exhibit complete cognitive shutdown. You remain not only conscious but analytically engaged." Sam gritted his teeth against the artificial agony coursing through his body, but kept his voice steady. "Maybe your parameters are wrong. Maybe you've been studying the wrong things." The alien paused its adjustments and stared at him. "Explain this statement." "You're measuring our capacity to endure pain," Sam said. "But you're not measuring our capacity to learn from it. Every time you hurt us, we understand more about how your technology works. Every test teaches us something new about your weaknesses." Krull made a dismissive sound. "Primitive species cannot comprehend Vrex technology through mere observation." "Try me," Sam challenged. "That neural stimulator you're using operates on frequency modulation principles. The base setting is designed for creatures with distributed nervous systems, but you've had to boost the output by roughly 60% to affect human physiology. The power coupling shows stress indicators, which means you're pushing the device beyond its optimal parameters." The research director's large black eyes widened slightly. This level of technical analysis was impossible from a primitive specimen under extreme duress. Yet the human's observations were accurate enough to be genuinely concerning. Furthermore, Sam continued, the emergency shutdown sequence requires simultaneous activation of two controls, probably to prevent accidental disabling. But the guards are positioned in a standard formation that assumes the subject will be incapacitated. If someone were mobile and motivated, those controls would be easily accessible. Krull turned to check the control panel, and in that moment of distraction, Sam acted. The neural stimulator had temporarily blocked his pain responses while the alien adjusted settings. Sam used this brief window to break free from the restraint field, his movements calculated and precise. The guards reacted exactly as Sam had predicted, moving in patterns designed to contain a confused, broken subject, rather than a thinking predator. Sam reached the emergency controls and shut down the restraint systems throughout this section of the station before the first guard could draw its weapon. But instead of running for the exit as every other escaped specimen had done, Sam did something unprecedented. He went hunting. The maintenance tunnels he had mapped out during weeks of observation provided perfect cover for movement throughout the station. Sam's first target was the technician who had been assisting with the human experiments, a smaller alien who worked alone in a data analysis lab 2 levels down from the testing chambers. The technician never saw him coming. Sam had learned enough about Vrek's anatomy from observing the researchers to know exactly where to strike. The alien's respiratory system shut down instantly, and Sam carefully positioned the body where it would be discovered by the next shift rotation. Moving through the station's service corridors, Sam began systematically stalking the research team. Each kill was planned, executed with precision, and designed to maximize psychological impact on the survivors. He used improvised weapons created from the station's own equipment, turning their advanced technology against them. The second target was a guard who routinely used excessive force during prisoner transfers. Sam ambushed him in a corridor junction, using a modified maintenance tool to disable the alien's environmental suit. The vacuum of space did the rest, and Sam arranged the scene to look like a catastrophic equipment failure. By the time the third body was discovered, panic was spreading throughout the research section. The aliens had dealt with escaped specimens before, but never with one that actively hunted them through their own facility. Emergency protocols were activated, but these were designed to recapture fleeing prisoners, not to defend against a predator. That had turned the station into its hunting ground. Sam's fourth target was the alien, who had been conducting psychological torture sessions on Lisa. He found the creature alone in its quarters during the sleep cycle, reviewing data from the day's experiments. The kill was quiet and efficient, but Sam left clear evidence that this had been an execution rather than a random attack. Krull discovered the body and immediately understood the pattern. The human was not killing randomly or out of desperation. Each victim had been specifically chosen based on their role in the torture and experimentation of the human prisoners. This was calculated revenge, carried out with terrifying precision. Security alert level maximum, Krull announced over the station's communication system. We have a hostile specimen loose in Research Section 7. This is not a standard escape attempt. The subject is actively hunting station personnel. The guards who responded to the alert found a station transformed into a nightmare. Lights had been systematically disabled in key corridors, creating shadowy hunting grounds that favored the escaped human. Equipment had been sabotaged to create noise and confusion. Emergency doors had been reprogrammed to seal automatically, cutting off escape routes and communication between different sections. Sam had spent weeks observing not just the aliens themselves, but how their technology functioned. He understood their systems well enough to turn the entire research facility into a weapon against its own inhabitants. Every advantage the Vreks thought they possessed became a liability in the hands of someone who had studied their weaknesses with scientific precision. The fifth kill was a statement of intent. Sam cornered the alien who had been in charge of selecting human subjects for the most painful experiments. Instead of a quick death, Sam used the alien's own torture devices against it, ensuring the creature experienced every form of agony it had inflicted on human prisoners when Krull found this body. The research director finally understood the true horror of what they were facing. The human had not just escaped. It had declared war on the entire research operation. Every alien who had participated in torturing humans was now marked for death, and their own station had become the hunting ground. Emergency transmission 2. Fleet Command, Krull ordered, its voice shaking with fear. Research Station Omega-7 requests immediate military support. We have encountered a hostile species that does not conform to any known parameters. The specimens are extremely dangerous and should be considered priority targets for immediate termination. But Sam had anticipated this as well. Moving through the station's communication center, he systematically destroyed the transmission equipment. While the message was still being prepared, the Vrex would get no warning about what humans were truly capable of. Standing in the ruined communication center, surrounded by the bodies of 6 alien torturers, Sam looked out at the rest of the research station. Hundreds of aliens still lived and worked in this facility, believing themselves safe behind their advanced technology and superior numbers. They had made the mistake of thinking humans were like every other species. They had conquered, they expected, fear, submission, and eventual breakdown when faced with superior force. Instead, they had encountered something that viewed them as prey. Something that learned from every encounter, adapted to every challenge, and never stopped hunting until the threat was eliminated. The other human prisoners were still locked in their cells, but Sam knew they would be free soon. Not because he would rescue them, but because there would be no one left alive to keep them imprisoned. The hunt was just beginning, and the Vrex had no idea what they had unleashed upon themselves. They thought they were studying primitive specimens. In a controlled environment, they were wrong on every count that mattered. Sam checked his improvised weapons and began moving toward the next section of the station. There were still dozens of aliens who had participated in torturing humans, and he intended to find every single one of them. The Vrex Empire was about to learn why humans had become the dominant predator on a planet full of dangerous creatures. They were also about to discover that their first encounter with humanity would be their last. The station's emergency klaxons wailed through every corridor as Commander Morg arrived with 3 full combat squads. The military officer had responded to Krull's distress signal, expecting a routine prisoner containment situation. What greeted him instead was a research facility in complete chaos, with bodies scattered throughout the research sections and his personnel reporting ghost sightings in the maintenance tunnels. Situation report, Morg demanded as he entered the station's command center. Krull's hands trembled as it activated the security displays. 12 research personnel confirmed dead, 7 guards missing, and communication with sections 4 through 7 completely cut off. The human specimen has been loose for 18 hours, and our casualties continue to mount. Morg studied the tactical displays with growing disbelief. The security feeds showed a systematic campaign of destruction that defied everything he knew about conquered species. One primitive escaped from a holding cell and accomplished all this? The human is not primitive, Krull insisted. Our initial assessments were catastrophically incorrect. This species demonstrates capabilities we have never encountered before. They learn our technology through observation, adapt to hostile environments with impossible speed, and display tactical thinking that rivals our best military strategists. The commander activated his personal scanner and began reviewing the crime scenes through the security recordings. What he saw made his confidence in Vrex superiority waver for the first time in his career. The human moved through the station like a natural predator, using every advantage the environment provided while systematically eliminating any opposition. "Where is the specimen now?" Morg asked. Before Krull could answer, the lights in the command center went out. Emergency power kicked in seconds later, but in that brief darkness, something had changed. The tactical displays showed new casualties in Section 3, and the internal sensors detected unauthorized access to the station's main computer systems. "He's in the data center," one of the technicians reported with panic in its voice. The human has accessed our prisoner database and station schematics. It knows the location of every specimen on the facility. Morg realized with growing horror that this was not a random escape attempt. The human had a specific plan, and it was systematically eliminating obstacles to achieve its objectives. Lock down all prisoner sections immediately. Deploy squads to... His orders were cut short by explosions throughout the station. Sam had rigged several maintenance areas with improvised explosives, creating diversions while he moved to his real objective. The alien commander watched through security feeds as blast doors sealed automatically, trapping his soldiers in different sections and preventing coordinated response in the holding areas. The explosions had damaged the power systems maintaining the prisoner restraint fields. Lisa and the other humans found themselves free for the first time in weeks, but they were not alone. Dozens of specimens from other worlds were also escaping from their cells, and many of them had been watching Sam's campaign with growing hope. The humans showed us how to fight back, communicated a crystalline creature that had been imprisoned for over a year. It demonstrated that these aliens can be defeated despite their technology. The freed prisoners began their own revolt, but it was Sam who provided the leadership and tactical knowledge they needed. Moving through the station with deadly efficiency, he found the other humans and quickly explained his plan. The aliens are regrouping in the command sections, Sam told them. They expect us to try to escape to the docking bays. Instead, we're going to take control of their entire facility and use it against them. Lisa stared at him with a mixture of admiration and concern. Sam, there are hundreds of them and only 6 of us. Not just us, Sam replied, gesturing to the various alien species that had been freed from imprisonment. They've been studying specimens from dozens of worlds. Every single one of these beings has reason to hate the Vrex as much as we do. Tom had found weapons in the security stations Sam had cleared and was distributing them to the other humans. These energy weapons are similar to industrial cutting tools, point and fire. The safety protocols have been disabled. Sam led the growing army of freed specimens through corridors he had memorized during weeks of observation. His targets were specific and strategic: power distribution centers, life support systems, and computer nodes that controlled station operations. Each objective was achieved with minimal casualties among his followers, maximum damage to the facility, and growing terror among the Vrex defenders. Commander Morg found himself fighting a war unlike anything in Vrex military doctrine. His enemies used unconventional tactics, moved through areas that should have been impossible to access, and seemed to anticipate his every countermove. Worse, they were learning from every engagement, adapting their strategies faster than his forces could respond. The human is teaching the other specimens our weaknesses, one of his squad leaders reported. They're coordinating attacks on critical systems with impossible precision. We're losing control of the entire station. In the research laboratories, Sam found exactly what he was looking for. Krull's detailed files on every species the Vrex had encountered, including their plans for Earth. The invasion fleet was already assembled and would depart for the human homeworld within days. More importantly, the files contained navigational data for the Vrex homeworld and communication codes for their military command structure. Krull found Sam in the data center, downloading terabytes of classified information onto portable storage devices. The research director had come alone, carrying a weapon it clearly did not know how to use properly. You cannot comprehend the complexity of that data, Krull stated, trying to sound authoritative despite the fear in its voice. Primitive minds lack the capacity to understand Vrex strategic information. Sam looked up from the computer terminal and smiled coldly. I've already understood enough to know that your invasion fleet is undermanned, your homeworld's defenses rely on automated systems, and your species has never faced an enemy that fights back effectively. That's about to change. The research director raised its weapon, but Sam had expected this. Moving with the fluid precision that had made him such an effective hunter throughout the station, he disarmed Krull and pinned the alien against the wall. You want to understand humans? Sam asked quietly. We're the species that survived ice ages, plagues, wars, and natural disasters that would have destroyed any other intelligent life. We're persistent predators who never give up, never stop learning, and never forgive threats to our survival. You captured 6 of us for study. That was your first mistake. Your last mistake was thinking we were like the other species you've conquered. Krall's death was swift but deliberate. Sam positioned the body where it would be found by the surviving Vrex, along with a message written in their own language that he had learned from the computer files. The message was simple but devastating. Humanity was coming, and the Vrex Empire's days were numbered. The final assault on the command center was led by Sam but carried out by dozens of freed specimens working in perfect coordination. They had learned human tactics, adapted them to their own capabilities, and implemented them with ruthless efficiency. The Vrex defenders, trained to fight conventional military engagements, were overwhelmed by enemies who refused to follow established rules of warfare. Commander Morg made his last stand in the station's primary control room, surrounded by the bodies of his soldiers and the wreckage of his command structure. Sam found him there, alone and defeated, staring at tactical displays that showed complete loss of station control. "Your empire is finished," Sam told him. "You wanted to study humanity. Now you understand what we're capable of when threatened. The question is whether any of your people will survive long enough to learn from your mistakes." Morg looked at the human with something approaching respect mixed with terror. "Our invasion fleet will still reach your homeworld. Even if you kill everyone on this station, Earth will fall to our superior numbers," Sam smiled grimly. "Your invasion fleet is expecting to conquer a primitive species with limited technology and no knowledge of interstellar warfare. Instead, they're going to find a planet that's been preparing for your arrival since the moment you captured us. We've had weeks to study your technology, learn your weaknesses, and plan our defense. More importantly, we've had time to prepare some surprises of our own." The commander's final expression was one of horrified understanding. The Vrex had assumed human technology was primitive because they had only observed Earth's civilian infrastructure. They had no idea what humanity was capable of when fully motivated and focused on a single objective. Sam left Morg alive long enough to witness the station's final moments. The power core had been rigged to overload, and the explosion would take out half the Vrex fleet waiting in nearby space. More importantly, it would serve as a beacon, visible across multiple star systems, announcing to the galaxy that the Vrex Empire had encountered an enemy they could not defeat. As the evacuation alarm sounded and the remaining Vrex fled to their ships, Sam gathered the surviving humans and alien prisoners in the docking bay. They had captured several Vrex vessels and loaded them with everything needed for the next phase of the campaign. "Where are we going?" Lisa asked as their commandeered ship launched from the dying station. Sam activated the navigation system and entered coordinates he had memorized from Kroll's files. The Vrex homeworld. They sent an invasion fleet to Earth, but they left their own planet defended by automated systems and a skeleton crew. By the time their fleet realizes what happened here, it will be too late. Behind them, Research Station Omega-7 exploded in a ball of nuclear fire that consumed 3 Vrex warships and sent debris across the entire system. The message was clear to anyone with the ability to detect it. Humanity had arrived in the galaxy, and they were not the helpless primitives the Vrex had expected. The war for Earth's survival was about to begin, but it would be fought on terms that no alien empire had ever encountered before. The Vrex homeworld of Nexar rotated slowly beneath the stars, its surface covered with sprawling cities and orbital defense platforms that had protected the Empire's capital for over 3 centuries. Supreme Commander Vorth stood in the primary command center, reviewing reports from across Vrex territory with the satisfaction of a leader whose military had never known defeat. The destruction of Research Station Omega-7 had been officially classified as an industrial accident. A few escaped specimens were hardly worth mentioning in the grand scope of Imperial operations, and the loss of one research facility would not delay the planned invasion of the primitive world designated as Target 7739. The humans would be conquered. studied, and either enslaved or eliminated according to standard protocols. Fleet status report, Vorth commanded. Invasion force is 96% ready for departure, replied Admiral Zenth. 500 capital ships, 2,000 support vessels, and landing forces sufficient to subjugate the entire human homeworld within one planetary rotation. Our advanced scouts confirm the species remains technologically primitive with no interstellar military capability. What neither commander knew was that Sam Rivers had arrived in the Nexer system 3 days earlier. The captured Vrex vessel had provided him with access codes and navigational data that allowed him to approach the homeworld without triggering security alerts. More importantly, the ship's computer contained detailed information about Nexer's defensive systems and infrastructure. Sam had spent those 3 days studying the planet's weaknesses with the same methodical precision he had used to destroy. Research Station Omega-7, the Vrex homeworld, was protected by automated defense networks that had never been tested against an intelligent enemy operating from within their own territory. The systems were designed to repel external invasion forces, not to detect infiltrators who understood their technology and possessed legitimate access codes. The planet's primary defense grid was controlled from a facility built deep underground, beneath the capital city. Sam had identified this target within hours of entering the system, and had been systematically working his way through the security layers that protected it. The Vrex assumption that their homeworld was invulnerable had made them careless about internal security measures, using maintenance tunnels and service corridors remarkably similar to those on the research station. Sam moved through the underground complex with growing confidence. The aliens followed the same predictable patterns, used the same technological solutions, and made the same assumptions about security that had made them vulnerable before. The control center for Nexer's defense grid was staffed by 12 technicians who monitored automated systems that had operated flawlessly for decades. None of them expected to encounter a human infiltrator in the most secure facility on their homeworld. Sam's approach was silent, systematic, and absolutely lethal. The first technician died without knowing what had killed it. Sam used techniques he had perfected on the research station, striking with precision at vulnerable points in Vrex anatomy. The second and third technicians were eliminated before they could raise an alarm. By the time the remaining staff realized they were under attack, Sam had already accessed the primary control systems. The defense grid's computer network was sophisticated but followed logical patterns that Sam had learned to understand during his weeks of studying Vrex technology. He began uploading a virus he had designed using code fragments taken from the research station's computers. The virus was specifically engineered to target Vrex automated systems, creating cascade failures that would look like random equipment malfunctions rather than deliberate sabotage. As the remaining technicians tried to sound alarms and summon security, Sam systematically destroyed the facility's communication equipment. The underground complex was designed to be isolated from external interference, which meant that once the internal systems were compromised, no one outside would know what was happening until it was too late. Meanwhile, high above in orbit, Admiral Zenth was conducting final preparations for the departure to Earth. The invasion fleet represented the largest military force the Vrex Empire had ever assembled. Confident in their technological superiority and vast numerical advantage, intelligence reports suggested that humans possessed only primitive chemical rockets and had never developed energy weapons or force field technology. Final systems check complete, reported Fleet Captain Dex. All ships ready for jump to target. Coordinates. Estimated arrival at human homeworld in 47 standard hours. Admiral Zenth activated the fleet-wide communication system to address the invasion force. Warriors of the Vrex Empire, we depart today to claim another world for our dominion. The human species will join the dozens of others we have conquered through superior strategy and overwhelming force. Their primitive technology and limited military capability ensure swift victory. The fleet began moving toward the system's edge, where they would engage their faster-than-light drives. 500 warships, each capable of devastating a planet's surface, formed up in precise formations that had been used successfully in countless previous conquests. But as the fleet prepared to jump, warning lights began flashing throughout Nexar's defense network. Sam's virus had propagated through the planetary systems faster than the Vrex technicians could contain it. Automated defense platforms began shutting down in sequence, their targeting systems corrupted by code that made them unable to distinguish between friendly and enemy contacts. In the underground control center, Sam eliminated the last of the technicians and began the final phase of his plan. Using administrative access codes he had extracted from the research station's computers, he gained control of Nexar's orbital weapons platforms. The same defensive systems that had protected the Vrex homeworld for centuries were now under human control. Supreme Commander Vorth received the first reports of system failures just as Admiral Zenth's fleet was entering jump formation. The timing was not coincidental. Sam had calculated this sequence carefully, ensuring that the fleet would be committed to their departure when Nexar's defenses began failing. Multiple platform failures across all orbital sectors, reported the defense coordinator. We're losing control of primary and secondary defense grids. This appears to be a coordinated system attack. Vorth studied the tactical displays with growing alarm. The failures were too widespread and too precisely timed to be accidental. Someone with intimate knowledge of Vrex defensive systems was systematically dismantling their homeworld's protection. Recall the invasion fleet immediately, Vorth ordered. If our defenses are compromised, we cannot leave the homeworld unprotected. But it was too late. Admiral Zenth's fleet had already engaged their jump drives and disappeared into faster-than-light travel. The communication lag meant that recall orders would not reach them until they had already arrived at Earth. The Vrex homeworld was now defended only by the orbital platforms that were rapidly falling under enemy control. In the depths of the Defense Control Center, Sam completed his infiltration of Nexar's military networks. The virus he had introduced was now spreading through every automated system on the planet, from traffic control to power distribution to emergency services. More importantly, it was accessing the communication networks that connected Nexar to the rest of the Vrex Empire. The message Sam sent to every Vrex military facility in the galaxy was simple but devastating. Using Supreme Commander Vorth's own authorization codes, he broadcast a surrender order to all Vrex forces, claiming that the Empire had encountered an enemy too powerful to resist, and was implementing immediate withdrawal from all conquered territories. The confusion this created throughout Vrex space bought precious time for the species they had oppressed. Dozens of worlds that had been under Vrex occupation suddenly found their oppressors abandoning key positions as local commanders, tried to interpret contradictory orders from their high command. But Sam's primary objective was not the liberation of alien worlds. As the orbital defense platforms came fully under his control, he turned their weapons toward the surface of Nexar itself. The Vrex had built their homeworld's defenses to repel external invasion, never considering that those same weapons could be used against the planet they were meant to protect. Supreme Commander Vorth watched in horror as his own defensive systems began targeting critical infrastructure on the planet's surface. Power plants, communication centers, military bases, and government facilities were systematically destroyed by weapons that had never before been fired in anger. "How is this possible?" Vorth demanded of his technical staff. "Our systems have safeguards against exactly this type of attack." The senior technician's response was barely audible. "The infiltrator is using administrative codes that override all safety protocols. The attacks are being recognized as authorized military exercises by our own computers. We cannot regain control without completely shutting down the planetary defense grid." Vorth realized with growing despair that shutting down the defenses would leave Nexar completely vulnerable to any enemy forces that might arrive. But keeping them operational meant watching his own homeworld be destroyed by its own protective systems. As explosions bloomed across Nexar's surface and panic spread through the population, Sam began the final phase of his mission. He had learned from the research station's computers that Admiral Zenth's invasion fleet expected to find Earth defended only by primitive human technology. They had no idea that humanity had been monitoring Vrex communications and preparing for their arrival since the moment Sam and the others had been captured. The message Sam transmitted to Earth using Vrex military communication systems contained everything human defenders would need to defeat the invasion: fleet composition, tactical doctrines, weapon capabilities, and most importantly, the specific frequencies and codes needed to disrupt Vrex technology. What the Vrex had dismissed as primitive human science had actually been carefully concealed preparations for interstellar warfare. Earth's apparent lack of advanced technology was a deliberate deception, designed to make potential enemies underestimate human capabilities until it was too late. Sam's transmission also included coordinates for the Vrex homeworld and detailed intelligence about their empire's structure. Humanity would not be content with simply repelling the invasion. They would carry the war to every Vrex-controlled system until the species that had threatened Earth was no longer capable of threatening anyone. As Nexer burned around him and the Vrex Empire began its final collapse, Sam looked out through the facility's windows at the destruction he had orchestrated. The aliens had captured him thinking he was a helpless primitive specimen for study and disposal. Instead, they had brought aboard their research station the instrument of their own destruction. Admiral Zenth's fleet was already approaching Earth, expecting to find a defenseless world populated by creatures no more dangerous than the dozens of species they had conquered before. Instead, they would encounter a planet that had spent months preparing for their arrival. Armed with detailed knowledge of Vrex weaknesses and supported by technologies the aliens had never imagined. The first human the Vrex had seized would, indeed, be the last one they ever saw. Not because Sam had died in their laboratories, but because he had ensured that no Vrex would survive to see another human after their invasion. Fleet met the reality of what humanity was capable of when fully prepared for war. The Vrex Empire had made the fatal mistake of judging humanity by the standards of every other species they had encountered. They expected fear, submission, and eventual defeat when faced with superior numbers and technology. Instead, they had awakened something that viewed their entire civilization as a threat to be eliminated with methodical precision. The galaxy was about to learn what had made humans the dominant predator on a world full of dangerous creatures, and why the species that had survived ice ages and extinction events was not going to be conquered by aliens who had never faced real opposition. Sam's mission was complete, but humanity's war was just beginning.